Hello! Hope you are well. I am super excited to bring this notebook party to you virtually. So with any party, we need more people, and the more people, the better. So I've decided to invite two of my favorite people in the world. Actually, I work with them quite closely on notebooks, and they'll show us some tricks, and I'll show mine too. Hopefully, you'll learn something new and at the same time have some fun. Check it out. Hi, welcome to the Notebook Party. My name is Julie Koesmarno. I am a program manager working in the SQL Tools team for Microsoft. Joining me today with any good parties are Alan and Chris.
Hi, my name is Alan Yu. I'm a program manager working on Azure Data Studio for the last 3 years, and I'm super excited to show you all the great things we have in Azure Data Studio notebooks.
And my name's Chris Lafreniere. I'm an engineering manager, and my team works on Azure Data Studio notebooks. So we've been working hard to show you all these really cool, new, fun experiences.
Party tricks, remember? Because this is Notebook Party. All right, no, that's good. Okay, so I guess we can get started. Are you ready with your first set of party tricks, Alan?
I am. I'm very excited to show you what I have. All right, so as a quick thing, I want to just kind of show you all the great features that we've brought to Azure Data Studio notebooks over the last few months. We really had a focus to really make sure that anyone, when they're creating a notebook, you have a really great experience for you, especially when you are having to move cells around, or if you're having to write out these really long descriptions inside of your text cells. And that's something what we really wanted to improve behind the notebook editing experience. So if you kind of look back in our last few releases, we added a lot of support to make sure that people, if you're not familiar with Markdown, we added some additional options in the Markdown toolbar. And we also added the preview so that it's side by side as you're typing in Markdown along the way. In addition to that, we found that many of you have wanted to move cells around, so we added a couple actions to make it easy to move cells up and down so that you can make it just the way that you want it. And we can also convert cells too from text to code cells, and also made some nice improvements with Jupyter books, which Chris will actually be showing later on. And then on top of that, we have lots of goodies coming in with the September release, and I just can't wait to kind of just dive right in and show this goodness. But yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and just show you the latest updates with our Data Studio notebooks. So if I just switch over to here, this is your classic SQL notebook, right? This is the only notebook editor out there that has a dedicated SQL kernel that gives you IntelliSense, syntax highlighting, and all that good things, including being able to connect to a certain SQL connection. And for those of you that might be on an older update, you may not see that we completely revamped our toolbar here. We really simplified it and tried to cut down on the number of words that you saw here, and really tried to emphasize icons as much as possible, which can be accessible and also allows on hover to know what these actions are. But really, the core actions that a user will be doing are adding code and text cells. They'll be wanting to run all cells inside of a notebook. They want to be able to change the kernel to their language of choice, like SQL, PowerShell, and Python, and then also being able to actually connect to a SQL connection. So an example here is I'll just connect to this instance, and now this notebook is fully connected. So once I actually get to the portion down here to execute T-SQL, then it will be running queries against that connection. The next thing that I kind of want to show besides the toolbar updates is actually the cell toolbars. So when you click on a cell today, you'll see this little toolbar that shows up, which includes the ability to add cells, which also can be done from the toolbar above. But now you can actually move cells up and down with the arrow buttons here. So this is a great quality of life feature that many people have asked for in the past, and now we have added that in. In addition, we have also added additional overflow menu here. So if you want to convert this cell into a text cell, or into a code cell, or back into a text cell, you can do that with this convert cell button, which is one of our new features. But yeah, now let's kind of go into the editing experience. And what I really want to show here is it's a bit of a story. It's a bit of a journey that I want to kind of take all of you on, because there's a lot of things that we want to do here from when we initially shipped this experience to what the experience looks like in the most recent release. So originally, when we shared text cells, we just didn't give you any information. There was no toolbar on the top. There's no dedicated preview for you. You just kind of had to understand what Markdown was, and then you would have to exit the cell to see what the actual preview looked like. But over time, we realized that many of you have wanted to have more ways. You don't want to be looking up Markdown syntax all the time. So one thing that's great by switching to this view is you can see that as we had these more recent updates of how we're trying to listen to all of your feedback and try to improve the quality of life as you're editing notebooks. So see here, you have your side-by-side preview. So if I make any changes on this left side, they'll be reflected on the right. And in addition to that, we also have a Markdown toolbar that we added. So you don't have to remember what the bolding syntax looks like, or italicize, or even highlighting. And we also added the header options, as was mentioned earlier in one of the earlier updates. So like, for example, if I wanted to bold, just 1 second, if I want to bold this, click bold, it reflects as bold here. And if I want to click highlight, then I could also highlight it as well. And there are some great changes that you don't have to know the syntax. It just kind of just works. And yeah, and we are always trying to listen to more feedback in terms of what additional actions people are looking for. We have like a basic experience for adding images, but there's opportunities there to improve that experience as well. But yeah, before I kind of go and show something a little bit more advanced in terms of the story, do you have any questions, Julie?
No, this looks good. I'm super excited. I mean, I'm already using some of this in my day-to-day, so I'm really glad that the ability to preview is available.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to hear that. A lot of people are very excited for this because, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, they don't want to be looking up syntax all the time, and a lot of people are just like, I don't want to go and learn Markdown and all that. But then, what if you actually did have to know Markdown? And what if we just made it so that it's as easy as, just if you wanted to bold something or if you want to format something, that you didn't need to know like double asterisks or any of these things. And so we thought about it. And we were like, okay, let's imagine a world where all our future Azure Data Studio users don't have to know Markdown anymore. What would that world look like? And that's where we go into this mode. And this is what we fondly known as WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get. But the idea here is you now have what may appear as the preview experience that you might have seen in the Markdown preview earlier, but this is all fully editable in this experience right here. So for example, if I just type into here and I wanted to type in like my name is Alan, then this just works here. But the even great part is if I click bold, then it just works here too. And notice that I don't have to do double asterisk. I don't have to do any of those additional actions that it's treating just like any other text editor that you might have outside of the world of Markdown. And yeah, it's a brand new feature that came out in our most recent release. And we're excited to share that with all of you. So you don't have to know about Markdown anymore. And the great part too is you notice here that it just seems to automatically detect that I'm in this kind of bold mode. I want my text to be like this. But if you want to see the actual magic behind this, is that if you go to the Markdown view of this, it actually handles the syntax for you. So what is actually happening here is that we're able to detect we're able to support rich text formatting while also in the back end converting into Markdown for you. And it's just this really awesome thing here, so that for those of you who are those Markdown enthusiasts and want to work with Markdown, we give you the option to play in that mode and it'll be fully supported. None of the features from the past are going away. But for those of you who are like, I don't have time to go and learn Markdown, then you now have this WYSIWYG mode for you. And we're going to make sure that this full toolbar is fully supported there, and as well as bringing a lot of additional things here too. And yeah, I'm just really excited to show off this feature. But that's not all. imagine that you don't just want to be writing out this really long text cells, even though you have WYSIWYG, and it's really fun now to write these text cells. Now imagine that you just want to copy and paste things you find online, or even entire web pages that you just wanted to copy inside of your notebook because you really like the richness that kind of comes to really make your notebook shine. Don't you want anything like that, Julia, Chris?
Of course, we kind of
Always.
yeah, we did it like, it's a very common thing, to reuse other people's documentation, reuse some parts of it, and then make it my own. So yeah, that's definitely very useful, Alan.
Gotcha. I got something special for you now. So what I'm going to do here actually is I'm going to take some things that I found online and then compare from an older build that we had to what the experience looks like today in Azure Data Studio if you download it today. So what this looks like, just get my environment quickly set up, and I will go to a browser here. So check this out. I found this amazing GIF. I want to go share it in my notebook. Now, what I would have to do in the past, or let's just see what happens if I copy this image and just kind of paste it in the older notebook. So on the one on the left is the older one. On the one on the right is the new experience with WYSIWYG. So if I copy this image here, nothing happens. That's just great. The syntax you would need to do here is you would have to click image, and then you would have to add the image URL and those kind of things, which it's great. You give you the syntax right here. But what if we were to make it even better? So let's go over to here, and with WYSIWYG again, we're now in the text mode. Now let me try pasting it, and bam, your GIF just shows up. Your little hamster right here is just happily playing all their musical instruments. And what's great here is now we click back into that markdown mode, and it handles all of it for you. All the magic is already done with WYSIWYG. So I'm super excited to see GIFs fully supported here. Now let's take this one step further. As I mentioned, imagine that I'm trying to go and create Notebook really quickly, right? Let's say that, oh shoot, even before this demo, I needed to go create a SQL Notebook so that I could go present it to my local community group. So what I am going to do is go to our SQL Quick Starts, which is on our docs.microsoft.com, and just create a notebook really quickly for you. So what I'm going to do is actually copy all of this, which would take some time to build out this content yourself, adding the images in, and all that good stuff. I'll copy it all the way down to where I get to the code cell portion. So I'll copy this, and now I will copy it into the old experience, and then I will exit this experience, and you get most of it, which is a great thing. But you get no formatting, none of the images copied over. So it's not really too great for the kind of I need to create a SQL notebook now experience. So now if I go back to our WYSIWYG mode, let's see what happens if I paste this in. If I paste this in, I get everything that you would expect. You would get all the headers, you would get the images as well. And then if I were to exit here, as I mentioned earlier, everything is converted into Markdown for you as well. So it's a really great thing because watch how quickly I can create a notebook. So now I create a code cell here. I'm going to switch over back into this document. I'm going to quickly copy this snippet into my code cell here. And then I can add a new text cell, switch back over to here, and just start copying again until I find my next code segment. Oh, give me 1 second. Okay. Get to right here. There we go. And I will add one more text cell or a code cell. And it handles everything for you. Now look at this. I already have my SQL notebook all ready to go. I can go send it off to the new DBA on my team to go make a successful connection with Azure SQL. And there you go, just run all cells. And that's how quickly you can now create notebooks in Azure Data Studio. What do you think?
I think it's good. It's brilliant even.
Yeah, so this is something that if you download Azure Data Studio today, you get this experience right away. So I guess another party trick that I want to show off, as much as exciting this was, is that we also added a feature. If you go to settings here and type in show kernels, and as long as you have this button checked, this will allow you to support more kernels than the kind of 6 that we provide mostly out of the box. So we've been doing a lot of work with the .NET team. And what we now support in Azure Data Studio is .NET Interactive. So we support C#, F#, and PowerShell, which we already support today, but we have a .NET version of it that it can now all be supported in Azure Data Studio. So kind of as proof, I kind of take a similar approach. I created this notebook using the WYSIWYG editor. And now let's see what happens if I just execute these code cells. And bam, I now have a C# notebook working in Azure Data Studio. And so, if there's any other additional kernels that you see out there in the open source world, or if you're even thinking about creating your own, you can now support all of those inside of Azure Data Studio today.
Thanks, Alan. That was a really great set of party tricks. That's super awesome. Hang on a second. My phone just rang. Let me quickly take that. Sorry about that. Yes, Aaron. Yes, it's me. We're busy with like SQL bits. It's super important. What? You want to talk to Chris now? But he's presenting too. Fine. Okay, just be quick, all right? Chris, can you take this call from Aaron? He really wants to talk to you.
Hello? Yes, Aaron. Yes.
So,
PowerShell?
Yeah, the show must go on, and Chris is a little bit held up. Alan, can you continue with maybe another set of party tricks, perhaps?
Yeah, I got you covered. Let's do this.
Okay, awesome. Great, thank you.
The next party trick that I want to show you is that Azure Data Studio has been using notebooks in a really unique way. And one way that we really wanted to use notebooks is to kind of give you this guided experience and also have this artifact that if you wanted to go and do a deployment of any Azure data service, you could do it all within Azure Data Studio. So in order to get to this experience, if you just click on the Connections tab here and click on the 3 dots, you can simply click on New Deployment, and you could view all the different options that you could deploy from Azure Data Studio. And one thing that there's a couple items that are missing in this build, like we do support deployments of Azure SQL Database and also Azure SQL VM. But there's a whole use from here. Well, we'll do like a quick check on what version that you'll be deploying, all the required tools you would need in order to complete the deployment. And the plan is that we will give you a notebook at the very end of it that gets all the parameters passed in, and then you could then execute. And if there's any issues with your deployment, you have this deployment artifact that you could go share with a member on your team or send it over to Microsoft and get support. So the one that I want to kind of just show you as the most simplified one that you could even do today is just click on SQL Server 2019 container image. So when I click on any of these cards, immediately you'll see which version I want to be deploying. And then I can also see all the tools I would need. And already I have the right version of Docker. We do a quick check on it, and we have the right version. So next I'm going to click Select here. And you can see that this is probably the most simplest option compared to the other options. And all I have to do is give it a good password using best practices. And once I have these parameters filled out, this is where the magic happens, where these parameters will be passed into this auto-generated notebook, all the actions that I would need to completely to finish completing this deployment experience. And to kind of give you, instead of waiting for the whole deployment to finish, I already ran this notebook previously, and I can show you the results of that notebook. So if I just click on this notebook, it's the exact same actions I did before. You can see the actual commands that I ran by clicking Run All Cells, and it will go and sequentially run each of these code cells one at a time. And you can see that, I'm getting the right versions that I need. I get to run a Docker command to list all the existing containers, view any required information, pull the container image, start a new container, view all the containers, and then once this is all complete, I can actually leverage notebooks and some of the magic behind this, where it actually will interact with different components inside of Azure Data Studio. So if I were to click, like after successfully running this deployment, and I click on this button, what this will do is actually directly connect to SQL Server 2019 on the container image that I just made, and also show the dashboard associated with it. Isn't that great? You get to do your deployment and then also be able to run a query and start managing your database right away. And then in addition to that, we give you some best practices. So if you just want to play around with this experience, we give you the option to open the terminal window here, and then also pass the Docker commands to actually stop and remove the containers so you can easily clean up your environment. So this is just one of the ways where we're just one of those few tools and teams where we're trying to think about how do we make notebooks not just add this kind of like interactive document, but how can we really embed it into our UI and make this a really differentiated experience for all of our SQL Server and Azure Data users around the world. So yeah, this is just another trick that I want to show off, that if you want to deploy an Azure Data Service, expect to see many more coming through Azure Data Studio very soon. And that's all. Hand it back to you, Julie.
Cool. That is super awesome that we get to see the deployment party tricks. That's awesome. Hey, and Chris is back. That's super good. I guess we're ready with your party tricks, Chris.
Absolutely. Hey, Julie, I bet you have a lot of SQL scripts.
Indeed, I do. Yeah, SQL scripts in my closet, I call them.
Well, check this out then. So what I'd like to show you here is the ability to easily convert all the SQL scripts that you might have into notebooks. And then once you have notebooks, to convert those notebooks into easily consumable artifacts called Jupyter books. So let's get started. So here, I'm going to use PowerShell for this task. And I've already installed the SQL Server and the PowerShell Notebook module locally. We'll get back to what the PowerShell Notebook module is in just a second. So here, I'm just going to be running this first cell just to import these modules. Then I'd like to create a folder and then change the directory to that folder I just created. So now what we're going to be doing here is that we're actually going to be using Tiger Toolbox as a demo environment here because there are lots of SQL scripts there. So I'm going to go and git clone this into this directory I just created. This will take just a little bit of time. Now in ADS, we do have native support for source control as well. So it would be possible to, instead of doing this, to use the source control functionality that is in ADS. I think this is almost done. Great, perfect time. Now, we're going to go and see what kind of SQL files we actually have. So we have about, I don't know, 50, maybe even a little bit more. And so let's see what it would really take to go and convert these into corresponding notebooks. Notice I'm using this convert to SQL notebook command from the PowerShell module that we actually have created way up here at the top for the PowerShell notebook module. This is actually a result of an internal hackathon where the team was able to go and create this in only a few days. So just waiting for this to be done. And all right, let's take a look at what notebooks that we have right now. So notice we have all of these files now that are in the IPYNB format. Just scroll down here for just a second. So let's just, for simplicity's sake, let's copy all these notebooks to the directory. And then we're going to do a little bit of fix up where we're just going to replace the underscores with dashes here. So this will take just a second. All right. So now we're here, and let me just show you what this looks like. All right. So notice we have about 60 items, and let's just open up one of these notebooks just to see kind of what it looks like. All right, cool. So notice that we have these text cells and code cells. The text cells are based on what comments were in the SQL file to begin with, and the goes are being used to delineate between code cells here. So this is something automatically generated that we're able to do in just a few seconds. Awesome. And notice we have lots of other files that are in just the same format. So, okay, now we have all these notebooks. How do we go and actually create these into books? Because a Jupyter book is probably the easiest way to be able to share these notebooks in an easily consumable format. So in Azure Data Studio, we have a notebook that allows users to create books. Let's take a look and see what it looks like. So notice that we have this notebook, and it just has a few steps in it. And at the end of this, we're going to get a Jupyter book, which is consumable both in Azure Data Studio and elsewhere. So let's get started with creating our Jupyter book. So first, I'm going to execute this cell that just ensures that I have the right dependencies. Then I'm actually going to go and create this book. So I just need to provide a couple of things. The first thing is the path to where the book needs to be saved. So let me go and copy this. And then I need to provide the path for where my notebooks and any markdown files that I actually have already are stored. And voila. So now we have a Jupyter book that's been created at this folder. And so let's just take a look and see what we have right now. Oops. All right. So here, notice we have lots of files that have been generated here. There are a couple of interesting ones here. We have a config.yaml file, which, among other things, will allow you to customize the title of your book. And then the other thing that's interesting is going to be this table of contents file, which says, hey, here are where all of your notebooks and any markdown files that you have actually live. All right, let's continue here. And let's just format the TOC, table of contents file, a little bit so that we can preserve the folder structure. So once we run this, you'll actually notice that we've actually reduced the number of folders significantly. And now your book is about a quarter of the size that it used to be. So all's left to do now is to actually open the book in ADS. And I click the button, and wow, your book that has now been generated from SQL files is already in ADS in a consumable form.
So, Chris, this is really great how we have SQL scripts converted to notebooks and then packaged as a Jupyter book. Now, if I want to share this to another team member, say I'm a DBA, I want to share it with other team members, what's the best way to do this?
Yeah, so I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that you can do this, one of which uses the GitHub Releases mechanism, and the second uses our extension generator. Let's start with the GitHub release. First, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to compress the book that we just created into a zip file. Now, what I name this zip file matters because Azure Data Studio will actually be able to differentiate different versions and different languages of the book based on what the file name looks like. So here, I'm going to name it -1.1 for the version, and then EN for English. Awesome. Now that I have this, let me go to GitHub. And I have this GitHub repo that I created previously. I already had a GitHub release that I've created yesterday, but let's create a new release and show how that mechanic works. All right, so let me go and tag this version as 1.1 and create the Jupyter book for bits as the title. And then for the description, I'll just do that. And let me just copy and drag the zip file that we just created here. This will take just a second. Awesome. So now we have our zip file, we have our release tag version. So let's publish this release. Cool. So now our release is published. Let's show how we can actually access the release from within Azure Data Studio itself. So if the notebooks view it, if I go and use the add remote Jupyter book functionality from here, then I'm able to type in the repo address of my repo. And oh, look, I actually have a couple here for our couple of releases. So if I go and choose the book, the version, and the language, and click add, then what actually happens behind the scenes is that Azure Data Studio will unzip the, will download, then unzip the book, and then opens it in the notebooks view. So it's that easy to be able to share books through the GitHub release mechanism.
Wow, GitHub makes it sound official. This is super awesome. So, Chris, you mentioned earlier that you can share Jupyter Book with extension. Can you show me what that looks like?
Absolutely, Julie. So we have an extension generator that can really help you get started. To do this, I'm going to open my terminal and type in Yo Azure Data Studio. Once I've done this, I can use my arrow keys and find all these different types of extensions that I want to create. One of these options is creating an extension directly from Jupyter Book. Let's try that now. So first I just need to add a display name. And so I will type in Jupyter Book bits. Then for the publisher name, I'll put my own GitHub name. And then unique identifier, I can probably just keep it as Jupyter Book bits. That's OK. And let me just give a quick description here. And I'm going to point it to an existing book. And let me just provide the path here and copy it just so that I don't fat finger this. Awesome. So the generator was able to find all of our notebooks. So here I'm just going to include 3 of these files and folders. And after just a few seconds, we will see that I will have an extension. So I'm just going to start and follow these instructions and start editing this extension. So let me just change to this directory and open this directory in Visual Studio Code. Awesome. Included here, we include a quick start where users can go and see exactly what they need to do and have some nice tips around before publishing your extension. I know that I need to go and update the README before I can actually create an extension. So let me just update this really quickly. OK, great. Let me just now close Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to package up this extension. I'm just going to type in VSCE package, which is going to go and create a V6 file for me. And this will just take a couple of seconds. It's OK that I'm missing a repository field. Now I have the V6 that's been generated from the VSCE package command. Let's now install this extension from Azure Data Studio.
Yes.
So in Azure Data Studio, if I just go to the File menu and then choose Install Extension from V6 Package, then just if I choose this V6 file and then install it, then it's just going to ask me about third-party extensions. Then now my extension is installed. And so to show the actual book in the Notebooks view, all I have to do is to open the command palette and choose the launch book command. Once I do that, then the book that I just created from the extension, it shows up in the Notebooks view, and users can happily go on their way running and viewing notebooks.
That is pretty cool, Chris. So what you're saying here really is I can share an extension with another team member, as an example, and when they install that extension, they can actually load the Jupyter book that I've created earlier. And when they want to launch, they just use the Control-Shift-P. So it's kind of like part of the Azure Data Studio, essentially, once you have this extension installed. So it was Control-Shift-P or F1. Can you show that again, Chris?
Oh, absolutely. All I have to do is go to the View menu and then Command Palette, and then search for Launch Book. And then for whatever extensions that I have installed, they'll show up here in the command palette. You also talked about Control-Shift-P and F1. Those are also key combos that you could use to launch this command palette as well.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing these tips or these tricks.
Anytime. Thank you.
Wow, Alan and Chris, you've showed us just such amazing tricks. Okay, it's now my turn. My party tricks are all about these new Kusto experiences in Azure Data Studio. I'll maybe even bring some magic into it. Okay, check this out.
Okay, so some of you who are notebook users as well as Kusto users, you might be aware of this thing called KQL Magic. So essentially it's a package that you can install, and we do have that supported in Azure Data Studio. Now, another experience of Kusto that we've just recently added as part of the September release is the native Kusto experience. So today I'm going to show you both of the experiences. So let's get started with the first one, which is KQL Magic. Okay, so what I have here showing on the screen is essentially a Python notebook. Now, once I install KQL Magic package, I can simply do the reload extension. Once I do that, I can then essentially make connection to my cluster, in this case, my help cluster. Once that's done, I can simply write a KQL query. So it looks like this, and I want to make sure that I prefix it with the %KQL in front, or perhaps %KQL if I want to do multi-line querying. All right, so once I do that, I can also perhaps create a time chart visualization based on the KQL query. So here's an example where the data set or the rendering of the visualization is actually passed through to Python, and it gets rendered to Plotly. So this gives me ability to interact with the visualization or the chart itself, and I can zoom in some more, and then I can also reset it. Now that's the KQL Magic experience. With the native Kusto experience, once you have installed the Kusto or KQL extension, you'll be able to see your Azure Data Explorer clusters on the connections view. So here's an example of what that looks like. Once I'm connected to it, I can expand on the databases as well as the rest of the entities that are being supported for Azure Data Explorer. So as an example, in this, in this demo here, I'm actually using the Storm events. So I can check out the metadata a little bit. I can also have a look at the functions that are available. Now, if I want to create a new notebook, it's pretty straightforward. I can right-click and then click on the new notebook, and I get something like this. And I can also change the kernel to Kusto. So that's new, that's being supported. And it's currently attached to that cluster, which is the help cluster. Now, one thing that I haven't shown you is the connection details. So if I right click on this and then click on the edit connection, you'll be able to see connection type, which is Kusto, and then you can also see the cluster definition here too. So let me just cancel out of that and then go back to the Kusto notebook here. Right now, I can start typing in the storm events query. So let's do a tick 10 as an example, and then run that. Let me make sure I zoom out a little bit, that way it's a bit more readable. And I can also create another, perhaps more interesting data set, more interesting query rather. So here's a storm events, group by state, and then do a count. I can save this data set to other file formats. So for example, CSV, Excel, JSON, XML, but I can also visualize this data set as a chart. So here's an example. Let me just do a bit of a configuration here, change the data direction to vertical, and voila. So I can now visualize my analysis. Now let me show you another Kusto notebook that I've prepared earlier. So let me just click on this. There you go. So this is an example of a notebook where it's actually using the machine learning plugins. Again, I want to make sure that I'm connected to my Kusto kernel and then attach it to a Kusto cluster or Azure Data Explorer cluster. Make sure I want to specify the samples database like this and click connect. So now I'm ready to start running this query, which uses the Auto Cluster plugin. All right, there you have it. The KQL Magic experience as well as the native Kusto experience, all in Azure Data Studio.
So we've learned a lot of party tricks today from you, Alan, and from you, Chris, and from myself too. We learned Notebook WYSIWYG, super awesome, by the way. I still cannot believe that we managed to do that, so that's great. .NET Interactive, yay! I know special someone from specifically UK has been asking for .NET Interactive, so you know who you are. And then we also have the Notebook Assisted Deployment, especially that's super useful for someone like me who always tries to, spin up Docker container. So that's super great that it's available in Notebook. And then we also have from SQL scripts, SQL scripts in my closet to notebooks, and then notebooks to JupyterBook. And then we can package it, make it shareable via GitHub or via extension. So that's super awesome. And then lastly, the native Kusto supports specifically the notebooks with Kusto kernel. So in total, we have 8 party tricks. So hopefully this has been super fun and entertaining for you. And of course, hopefully you learn from this, learn new bits. Now, speaking of new bits, where can we learn more about this, Alan?
Great, thanks, Julie. So I got a notebook for you. Let me just start sharing. Gotcha. So here's a lot of great links. So this is a part where you could go take a picture or a screenshot, and just so you can remember all these important links. But yeah, to get the latest version, just simply go to ak.ms/get Azure Data Studio. If you want to open any feature requests, like you just saw all these party tricks and you just like, I have a really great idea, or this could be improved by just doing this quick improvement there. Or if you try out some of these features and you discover any bugs throughout these experiences, then just go ahead to our GitHub and report those issues directly, and you'll get to even see the engineer that gets to work on your feature. There's a place we created and revamped our notebook documentation, so you can simply go to our ak.ms link there. And then also be sure to follow us on Twitter. We're always looking for the latest conversations around Azure Data Studio, around where we can improve. And we're also just keeping eyes on it in case there's anything we need to go report to our engineers as well. But yeah, that's definitely go try out Azure Data Studio. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thanks for joining our party today. One ask from the engineering side is to please just keep that feedback coming. Hopefully you all learned something. Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much for being part of the journey with Azure Data Studio, especially with notebooks. We really appreciate it. Now, I know that we cannot do or throw this notebook party in person with you, But we have had a lot of fun putting together this virtual version of Notebook Party for you. Special thanks as well, by the way, to my colleague Alan and Chris here.
Oh, Julie, I think you're forgetting your phone.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there it is. But it's not Duo. What?